Im US-Wahlkampf 2016 schicken die Republikaner einen Überraschungskandidaten ins Rennen. Um seinen Traum von der Wiederherstellung russischer Größe zu verwirklichen, plant Putin die Eroberung der Ukraine. Der politisch unerfahrene Immobilienunternehmer Trump setzt sich an die Spitze des Rechtspopulismus.
Even as 16 months later we finally begin to respond to what happened to us, Mr. Trump is still, singing the praises of Mr. Putin, right? There is a reason for that.
That this is such an unprecedented situation. We've never had a foreign government trying to interfere in our election.
We have said quite clearly that our source is not a member of any state, including the Russian government.
In 2013, RT's editor-in-chief had visited WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange in person at the Ecuadorian embassy in London to discuss renewing his contract with RT.
We have said clearly that our source is not a member of a Russian state.
During the 2016 campaign, Assange became one of Russia's most valuable propagandists.
We'll talk about that in a minute. We have to go back to WikiLeaks. Oh, WikiLeaks.
I think it's going to become clear that Mr. Trump was part of a Russian operation which began long before the 2016 elections. It's inconceivable that he was unaware of this fact.
Candidate Trump praises WikiLeaks, says he loves them, and openly appeals to the Russians to hack his opponents' emails, telling them that they will be richly rewarded by the press.
7 Monate vor der Wahl liegt er in Umfragen deutlich hinter der Demokratin Hillary Clinton. Für den Kreml aber ist Clinton ein Problem, weil sie fest an der Seite der Ukraine steht. Mai 2016, 5 Monate vor der Wahl. Bei einem Hackerangriff auf Server der Demokraten werden E-Mails und Dokumente des Wahlkampfteams von Hillary Clinton gestohlen. Das FBI erfährt, dass Moskau Kontakt zu Trumps Team aufnimmt.
Die russische Regierung trat an George Papadopoulos heran. Sie hätten Informationen, die Hillary Clinton schaden könnten, und boten an, sie zu veröffentlichen.
CIA-Chef John Brennan warnt Trump vor der Einflussnahme Russlands auf sein Wahlkampfteam.
Anfang Juni habe ich mich im Trump Tower mit Donald Trump und einigen anderen für ein Briefing zusammengesetzt. Es ging um das Ausmaß der russischen Einmischung in den Wahlkampf. Trump hörte sich alles an, war aber überaus skeptisch. Ständig versuchte er, den Fokus von Russland wegzulenken. Er meinte, es könnten genauso gut die Chinesen gewesen sein. Er wollte wohl wissen, woher wir unsere Erkenntnisse hatten.
Arbeitet Trumps Wahlkampfteam mit Russland zusammen?
Darauf war ich nicht vorbereitet. Dass es derartige Verflechtungen zwischen russischen Regierungsvertretern und dem Wahlkampfteam von Trump geben soll, hat uns alle überrascht. So etwas hatte niemand von uns je erlebt.
Im Zuge der Ermittlungen geraten 5 Personen besonders ins Visier des FBI. Ihnen werden illegale Absprachen mit Russland vorgeworfen. Die Berater Page und Papadopoulos, Politikberater Stone, Sicherheitsberater Flynn und Wahlkampfmanager Paul Manafort.
George Papadopoulos, foreign policy advisor, recruited by the Russian secret services, has pled guilty to lying to the FBI. Mr. Page, who was recruited by the Russian secret services and has now confessed. Michael Flynn, paid by the Russian propaganda sender, RT, named as national security advisor anyway, had to resign. Carter Page, employed by a Russian gas company, recruited by the Russian secret services, had to resign. Richard Spencer, you might not know that his wife is the translator of the major Russian fascist into English. It's as close as that. Heimbach, David Duke, all of them are major admirers of Putin. We know that Manafort, that Trump Jr., that Kushner in June 2016 met in Trump Tower to collude with the Russians. We know that Kushner was silent about his contacts with the Russians. We know that Sessions perjured himself in his confirmation hearings, which you would think as Attorney General would be the last thing that you would do, about his contacts about the Russians.
On August 8th, Roger Stone, a longtime Trump political advisor and self-proclaimed political dirty trickster, boasts in a speech that he has communicated with Assange and that more documents would be coming, including an October surprise.
Wilbur Ross, who's the Secretary of Commerce, was a director of a bank in Cyprus, which was one of the major places that Russian oligarchs laundered money. That would have been on his watch. Rex Tillerson was awarded the Order of Friendship personally by Mr. Putin. Mr. Manafort spent his entire career propping up dictators.
For a decade, Manafort was paid millions to work in Ukraine with Viktor Yanukovych, a pro-Russian politician that became president with Manafort's consulting help. In 2014, Manafort's time there was cut short when the deeply corrupt Yanukovych was forced to flee to Moscow when the Ukrainian people revolted after his decision to embrace Russia instead of Europe.
Manafort found his way safely back to Trump Tower, where he already had an apartment, and understood his position as campaign manager to Donald Trump as a way to get out from under his debts to the major Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska.
Manafort soll Geldwäsche für einen russischen Oligarchen betrieben haben.
Stiller Teilhaber war Semyon Mogilewitsch.
Der russische Mafiaboss ist einer der meistgesuchten Verbrecher der Welt. Und einer der ersten Investoren in den Trump Tower. Mit guten Beziehungen zu Putin. Die Spur führt zu einem Geschäftspartner von Trump. Felix Sater.
Sein Vater war ein hochrangiger Akteur im Gangstersyndikat unter Mogilewitsch. Felix Sater arbeitete im Trump Tower 2 Etagen unter Trumps Penthouse. Trump muss von seiner kriminellen Vergangenheit gewusst haben.
Bye, everybody.
Felix Sater hat Trump vorgeschlagen, einen Trump Tower in Moskau zu bauen und dafür die Genehmigung von Putin einzuholen. Trump war direkt Feuer und Flamme. Damit würde ein lang gehegter Traum in Erfüllung gehen. Mit Saters Hilfe hat Trump also während seines Wahlkampfs heimlich versucht, Putin zu einem Deal zu bewegen. Ein Deal, an dem er etliche Millionen $Millionen verdienen würde.
Mr. Trump himself, 5 months into his campaign, signed a letter of agreement to build a hotel in Russia, not a hotel, a building, which would have been by the same model that Mr. Trump had been using with the Russians for the previous 15 years, which is that they give him money and he gets out of the way. That is how Soho Tower was built. That is what Bayrock is. Bayrock gives Trump money. He gets a percentage of the profits. He invests nothing himself. He just gets out of the way, which if you know about Trump's career as a businessman is a wise policy. Something is built. The units in that something are used to launder money, right? That is the story of Mr. Trump's return.
Now, our source wasn't from the Russian state, but if it had been from a state, would we have suppressed that information before an election, or would we have accurately and fairly published it? Of course we would have published it.
A hacker who goes by the moniker Guccifer2 claims responsibility for hacking the DNC and giving the documents to WikiLeaks. But leading private cybersecurity firms, including CrowdStrike, Mandiant, and ThreatConnect, review the evidence of the hack and conclude with high certainty that it was the work of APT-28 and APT-29, who are known to be Russian intelligence services. The U.S. intelligence community also later confirms that the documents were in fact stolen by Russian intelligence, and Guccifer2 acted as a front.
Guccifer released a gold mine for Republican operatives, the DNC's counter-strategy. Then, on the eve of the Democratic National Convention, WikiLeaks published 44,000 DNC emails.
There was an ugly truth, and we published accurately and fairly that ugly truth.
The messages were fairly mundane, but some revealed that a few party officials favored Clinton over her opponent Bernie Sanders. To political observers, this was unsurprising. Hillary Clinton had been a superstar in the party for 25 years, while Bernie Sanders, an independent, wasn't even technically a Democrat. But that didn't matter to Sanders' supporters, who were still bitter over his loss. The leaks gave them someone to blame. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the party chairwoman who had planned the entire convention and was about to preside over it, was forced to abruptly resign. Still unsatisfied, angry Sanders delegates protested throughout the event, including during Clinton's acceptance speech.
Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet. There's nothing I can think of that I'd rather do than have Russia friendly as opposed to the way they are right now. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
Mr. Trump and Russia come together over precisely this.
13 years ago, I was seriously in trouble. I was billions of dollars in debt.
With Trump's back against the wall, with his business empire collapsing all around him, it was Russian money that came to the rescue.
I used my brain, I used my negotiating skills, and I worked it all out. Now my company's bigger than it ever was, it's stronger than it ever was, and I'm having more fun than I ever had.
Mr. Trump is a failed businessman who plays a successful businessman on TV.
And as the master, I want to pass along my knowledge to somebody else. I'm looking for the apprentice.
The idea that he's a successful businessman is fiction.
I've mastered the art of the deal.
In terms of like grand finance, he's an American loser.
Turned the name Trump into the highest quality brand.
He is rescued by Russia.
I own buildings all over the place.
Russia makes the fiction plausible.
Model agencies, the Miss Universe pageant, jetliners, golf courses, casinos.
He's rescued by Russia, which makes it plausible for him to present himself as a successful businessman.
My name's Donald Trump, and I'm the largest real estate developer in New York.
And then Russia gets that fiction, helps to get that fiction elected president of the United States.
You're fired.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you encouraged espionage against our people, that you are willing to spout the Putin line, sign up for his wish list, break up NATO, do whatever he wants to do, and that you continue to get help from him because he has a very clear favorite in this race.
For the second phase of Russia's operation, a barrage of fake news stories written on blogs and posted to social media, where they were spread by a small army of Russian-run Twitter and Facebook accounts.
We have 17 intelligence agencies, civilian and military, who have all concluded that these espionage attacks, these cyber attacks, come from the highest levels of the Kremlin, and they are designed to influence our election. I find that deeply disturbing.
Because no one was going to read the many thousands of leaked Democratic emails, they were cited as the source for hundreds of fake news stories. Many of them were too crazy to believe, but the sheer number of them that passed through the social media feeds of tens of millions of Americans helped to plant seeds of doubt about Clinton's integrity and trustworthiness.
She has no idea whether it's Russia, China, or anybody else.
I am not quoting myself.
No idea.
I am quoting
Hillary, you
17.
Have no idea.
17 do you doubt 17
our
military
has
and
no
civilian
idea.
agencies? Well,
yeah,
he'd rather believe Vladimir Putin than the military and civilian intelligence professionals who are sworn to protect us. I find that just absolutely frightening.
Outlets like RT and Sputnik contributed to the influence campaign by serving as a platform for Kremlin messaging to Russian and international audiences. It had consistently cast President Trump as the target of unfair coverage from traditional US media outlets who it says served a corrupt political establishment. RT's coverage of Secretary Clinton throughout the US presidential campaign was consistently negative and focused on her leaked emails and accused her of corruption, poor physical and mental health, and ties to Islamic extremism.
Putin has outsmarted her at every step of the way.
Thousands of paid Russian trolls spread these stories on social media and the comment sections of news organizations.
Putin has outsmarted her in Syria. He's outsmarted her every step of the way.
I do get to ask some questions.
Yes,
and I would like to ask you this direct question. The top national security officials of this country do believe that Russia has been behind these hacks. Even if you don't know for sure whether they are, do you condemn any interference by Russia in the American election?
By Russia or anybody else?
You condemn their interference?
Of course I condemn. Of course I can. I don't know Putin. I have no idea.
I think it's right to say that Mr. Trump is the payload of a Russian cyber weapon. But we, as the ones who were defeated by that weapon, have to ask why we were so easy to defeat.
I never met Putin. This is not my best friend. But if the United States got along with Russia, wouldn't be so bad.
On August 6th, RT published an English language video called Julian Assange Special. Do WikiLeaks have the email that'll put Clinton in prison? And an exclusive interview with Assange entitled Clinton and ISIS Funded by the Same Money. RT's most popular video on Secretary Clinton, how 100% of the Clintons' charity went to themselves, had more than 9 million views on social media platforms. RT's most popular English language video about Trump, called Trump Will Not Be Permitted to Win, featured Assange and had 2.2 million views.
Let me tell you, Putin has outsmarted her and Obama at every single step of the way, whether it's Syria, you name it.
As the election entered its final weeks, Democratic candidates in dozens of states were targeted by leaked documents stolen from the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Conspicuously missing from all these leaks was any publication of Republican emails. Instead of condemning the hacks as the act of a foreign government against America's sacred democratic process, Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump praised Putin.
She has been outsmarted by Putin, and all you have to do is look at the Middle East. They've taken over. We've spent $6 trillion. They've taken over the Middle East. She has been outsmarted and outplayed worse than anybody I've ever seen in any government whatsoever.
Einen Monat vor der Wahl 2016 taucht ein Skandalvideo auf, das hohe Wellen schlägt.
Breaking news tonight. Comments from Donald Trump that are even drawing fire from the head of the Republican Party. An open microphone caught Trump making vulgar comments about women in 2005 in a recording obtained by the Washington Post.
And Denver 7 political reporter Marshall Zellinger is here with what was said by Trump and how he is now responding. Marshall?
And Shannon, what you're seeing here is from a 2005 recording for Access Hollywood. Donald Trump is already mic'd up in this bus with host Billy Bush to record a segment about Trump appearing on a soap opera. This is just months after marrying his current wife, Melania. The audio we're about to play for you was recorded just before this moment when they meet up with their soap star.
She's your girl's hottest in the purple.
Whoa!
Yes!
Whoa! I gotta use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the I can do anything.
Ist es das Aus für Putins Favoriten?
A shocking video of Donald Trump talking on an open microphone, bragging about sexually assaulting women.
Ich habe mit dem Leiter der Wahlkampffinanzierung des Trump-Teams gesprochen. Er war verzweifelt und meinte, die Sache sei gelaufen. Ein Wahlsieg undenkbar.
About half an hour after that, there was a big email dump from the Russians with a cover story which involved democratic pedophilia and selling children as prostituting children, which of course seemed ridiculous to all the people who cared about Trump and sexual assault, but it was out there within half an hour. And what happened very quickly was that it quickly became on the one hand, on the other hand. Well, maybe Trump said this, but on the other hand, did you realize that Hillary Clinton is selling sex with children in the basement of a pizza parlor? Which again, that might seem absurd, but if you just follow the numbers, 30+% of the American population believe that story at a certain point.
Und alle Aufmerksamkeit richtet sich wieder auf Hillary Clinton.
And what's really important about WikiLeaks is that the Russian government has engaged in espionage against Americans. They have hacked American websites, American accounts of private people, of institutions. Then they have given that information to WikiLeaks for the purpose of putting it on the internet. This has come from the highest levels of the Russian government, clearly from Putin himself, in an effort, as 17 of our intelligence agencies have confirmed, to influence our election.
Later in August, Stone does something truly remarkable when he predicts that John Podesta's personal emails will soon be published. Trust me, he says, it will soon be Podesta's time in the barrel. #CrookedHillary.
The first time I was contacted by the FBI was 2 days after WikiLeaks started dropping my emails. On October 7th, the Access Hollywood tape comes out. 1 hour later, WikiLeaks starts dropping my emails.
The month before the release of the Podesta emails, President Obama had pulled Putin aside during a summit in China to tell him to stop meddling in the election.
What I was concerned about in particular was making sure that that wasn't compounded by potential hacking that could hamper vote counting, affect the actual election process itself. And so in early September, when I saw President Putin in China, I felt that the most effective way to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out, and there were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't.
After the release of the Podesta emails, the Obama administration issued a direct threat to Russia through the Moscow-Washington crisis hotline that further action would be met with armed conflict. President Obama was now squarely focused on deterring Putin from taking more aggressive actions that could actually disrupt voting on election day. But few US media outlets understood the gravity of the situation at the time. Many American journalists were seduced by the gossipy nature of the leaks and the clicks they generated. Every major publication wrote several stories citing the DNC and Podesta emails, becoming an inadvertent instrument of Russia.
So I actually think the most important question of this evening, Chris, is finally, will Donald Trump admit and condemn that the Russians are doing this and make it clear that he will not have the help of Putin in this election, that he rejects Russian espionage against Americans, which he actually encouraged in the past. Those are the questions we need answered. We've never had anything like this happen in any of our elections before.
WikiLeaks, I love WikiLeaks. And I said, write a couple of them down. Let's see. During a speech, crooked Hillary Clinton, oh, she's crooked, folks. She's crooked as a $3 bill.
The CBS News battle tracker showing that 55% of voters polled think Clinton has different motives in private than in public.
Putin, like everyone else, was left to wait and see if he had done enough to make Trump president. The election turned out to be extremely close. Donald Trump's margin of victory was less than 1% in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, which combined for 46 electoral votes, more than enough to sway the outcome. Russian media hailed Trump's victory as a vindication of Putin's advocacy of global populist movements and the latest example of Western liberalism's collapse. Reports said officials in the Kremlin popped champagne the night of the election. Intelligence agencies assess with a high degree of confidence that Moscow will apply lessons learned from this campaign to future influence efforts in the United States and the rest of the world, including against American allies and their election processes.
Die Grünen haben eine wirklich knallharte Russlandlinie, die ist deutlich härter als die Russlandlinie der Kanzlerin, deutlich härter natürlich auch als die Russlandlinie der SPD, die seit Jahren immer pro-russischer wird. Und wenn man im Kreml eins verhindern möchte, dann ist das eine grüne Regierungsbeteiligung.
The New York Times summarized the operation this way. While there's no way to be certain of the ultimate impact of the hack, this much is clear. A low-cost, high-impact weapon that Russia had test-fired in elections from Ukraine to Europe was trained on the United States with devastating effectiveness. For Russia, with an enfeebled economy and a nuclear arsenal it cannot use short of an all-out war, cyberpower proved the perfect weapon. Cheap, hard to see coming, hard to trace. Putin, a student of martial arts, had turned two institutions at the core of American democracy, political campaigns and independent media, to his own ends.
Die US-Geheimdienste veröffentlichen noch vor Trumps Amtseinführung einen gemeinsamen Bericht. Darin heißt es, Putin habe eine Einflusskampagne seiner Geheimdienste angeordnet, um den Ausgang der Wahlen zu beeinflussen.
Russlands Ziel dabei war es, den Glauben der amerikanischen Öffentlichkeit in den demokratischen Prozess zu untergraben. Zudem kommen wir zu dem Schluss, dass Putin und die russische Regierung dabei angestrebt haben, Donald Trumps Wahlchancen zu erhöhen.
Russia is like the bad doctor, right? The doctor who diagnoses you in order to make your ailments worse. Okay? Nevertheless, the stuff on his clipboard is really interesting because the diagnosis is more or less correct.
Die Frage ist, warum hat sich Russland so offensichtlich in den Wahlkampf eingemischt?